author. She has, I'm going to look at my...
I don't read very much.
Okay. Okay. Well, she has authored 5 books, and I do want to put a shameless plug in. There is a wonderful book on the topic we're going to be talking about today that if you want a copy and would like to purchase one, they'll be in the back afterwards. So just know that that's her most recent book. But she really is an encourager, she's a speaker, she is an advocate for women. Like, she wants all of us at this stage of life, as well as younger women, to really know God's love for them and to know what they're made for. And I love that about her. And probably one of her joys in life, you can, if whoever wants to put their family picture up, her big joy is that she has 3 grown children and 9 grandchildren, which is pretty amazing. And while we're getting that picture, Judy and her husband Steve they lead the global ministry of Campus Crusade. So it is a huge, huge ministry, and they are the ones that we get to follow, and with such humility and integrity and character. Here's her family. Do you want to say anything about them?
They're awesome.
9 grandchildren, right?
Well, and another sort of one, 10.
Okay, 10. And 3 children. So this was at a reunion, I guess, in the last couple of years?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. So I was going to say that the way that I really, really connected with Judy is that our daughter, Michelle, our middle child, had the privilege of being Judy's assistant, being who Mary is, before Mary came for 2 years and traveled around the world with Judy. I forgot to say, she has traveled all around the world speaking, and like I said, with her books that she shares with people as well. But I learned a lot about Judy through Michelle, and 2 things that stood out that Michelle shared with me that I wanted to share with you before Judy gets up and shares is, one, Judy was very clearly called to the homeless community, just in general. In fact, on the way here, there was a man she wanted me to pull over, and it's just like there's traffic, and I'm like, okay, you really want me to go all the way around? Yeah, but I mean, honestly, she could tell you more about it, but one thing Michelle told me was she said that she was so touched when she went to downtown Orlando, and I forgot to mention they live in Orlando now too. She went to downtown Orlando, and I can't get through this without choking up, but one of the homeless men called her name out and said, Judy. And just that they would know her and call her by name is just, my husband and I were in tears when we were talking about this the other day. So that is just beyond words. And then the second area is that Judy lives a life of gratitude. Michelle?
I'm going to talk about that.
You want me to stop there? Okay, I'll do what she tells me. We're in for a treat, so welcome up, Judy.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. This sweet lady has been telling me about you for a long time, and so I'm delighted to get to come and be here and be a part of it. And I'm going to tell you a little of my story. I'm going to talk about this book, which is kind of a life thing, 20 years of my life. And I hope some things that will encourage you and surprise you. So, yeah. So, first thing is, the name of the book, by the way, is When You Love a Prodigal, 90 Days of Grace for the Wilderness. And so one of the questions I get asked all the time, well, what is a prodigal? Well, that really varies as how you would define it. The original definition of prodigal, you have it there, is an adjective: extravagant, lavish, abundant, and bountiful. And so then you say, well, how did that come to mean somebody who has gone away from a good path for their life? That's what basically people think of in various degrees. Well, I'm not sure how it got there, but it did. And so I made up my own definition. When you're a word person, you can do that. And so can you, by the way, make up words. The dictionary changes drastically every year. It's a noun, and it's a person who is extravagantly, taking the word from the original, wasteful or lavishly reckless in their decisions, or abundantly profligate. But even with those, there are so many levels of you're gonna hear a little of my story, and it was a very hard story, with a son who made lots of really bad choices. But then there's one of my very closest friends, whose son is an attorney and a clerk for a Supreme Court justice, and he's making all right decisions for his life, except he's totally rejected the faith that he grew up with, and so she's brokenhearted over that. And so she prays for him. And then there's people who, they just walk away from the family. They, you know, this boy, he has lots of relationship with the family, but I know others, the kids, they're not doing badly, they're just not being part of a family. And you think of yourself and you go, if I didn't have a relationship with my kids, I would be brokenhearted. And so I would be praying for that to be restored. I have a friend at work who hasn't talked to his son in 10 years. He finally found out where he lives and wrote him a note, sent him because all he had was an address. And so he sent him a letter and he said, could I talk to you or see you? And the son wrote back, he says, well, thanks for writing, but probably not. And you just think, how do those things happen? And I don't have hard answers for that, but I have some things that have been helpful. Now, I know that you all are mostly in time of life with older children, and so life actually gets more challenging if there are differences of opinion and values and what you want in life when your kids are adults, because you have potentially no influence, and it's a hard thing to know what to do with it. So we'll talk about a few of those things. But what I'm going to do is a little of my story, and then some overview of major things that are in this book, and then you can ask questions if you'd like about anything that I talked about. And I'm going to do my best to stay in time. I'm not real good at that, but here we go. So, a little of my story. So I have these two daughters. They are now 39 and 37, and they're awesome and wonderful. And one of them made a few not right choices in high school, but not bad. And the other one was almost perfect, except my son said, she's not as perfect as you think she is. But when we had just moved to Florida, which was 28 years ago now, my girls were 9 and 11, and a new friend said, by the way, with all these Campus Crusade people who had just moved to Florida from California, do you know someone who could take an 8-year-old boy? And God had already been telling me, I'm going to send you a son. And I'm like, maybe not. And he said, oh no. And so she says, can someone, you know someone who can take this boy? It was like God said, this is it. This is a gift that I'm giving you. And it took a year because of county rules and everything. And he came into our home as a foster child. He came with many needs. He'd been taken from his mother because of her neglect officially, but lots more. She's a drug addict, alcoholic, made her living mostly with prostitution, and the little trailer that her dad had set up for her to live in, lots of stuff went on there. And so this little boy is growing up with that. And I don't know what all he experienced. Once in a while he still tells me new things that went on there. And so he's pulled out of there. They want the grandparents to keep him, and they said, we're already raising his older half-sister, and we can't do it. We're too old, we're too tired, there's no way. And so my new friend was their best friend and wanted him to be in a good Christian home. So God chose us, and he comes into our home with so many needs. It was incredible. He's almost 10 when he came. He's going into 3rd grade, which, as you know, is an 8-year-old time. And he could barely read or write. He had ADD and learning disabilities that were fairly significant, and he had RAD, which is a reactive attachment disorder, which is because nobody has been trustworthy in his life, and so he's sure we will not be as well. And so he's got this wall around himself, won't let us in, gives us nothing, even though we did everything we could think of to include him in our family and make him part of our lives and talk about the Lord and get him in school and get him tutoring, because her drugs and alcohol mess with the brain when she's carrying him. And so I did a year and a half of brain patterning exercises with him every day for an hour. And you know, we did everything we could think of, and he's just this, you know, holding us off from any connection. Then they terminated his mother's rights and he was placed for adoption. And we said, do we want to do this? Well, I was pretty sure the Lord said so, and he convinced the rest of the family that we should, even though they weren't really thrilled. Because he just made our life chaotic. And he wasn't doing terrible things, that he just was needy. And it took a lot to even touch his needs. So we adopted him. He became part of our family, and I'm thinking now he will, you know, feel secure and know we care about him and we're not going to reject him. No, he went into middle school. Now, middle school, 6th grade, okay? He's almost 13 at the time. So he's big. So he's towering, you know how little 6th grade boys still are usually? He's towering over them. He found out, oh, this has all sorts of benefits. And so he basically bribed or stole from or, you know, threatened anybody smaller than he was, and that's how he would get money. And in class, he wouldn't stay still. His ADD was pretty severe. And so he spent most of his 6th and 7th grade in alternative classroom, which he thought was normal. And so he never was doing well in school, but he was in trouble all the time. And finally the principal said, if he does one more thing, if there's one more incident, he's out of here. And so we're desperate and asking the Lord what to do, and he led us to a program, a residential program, Christian program for troubled kids near where we lived. And so we went there. He was there for a year and a half, and we had to kind of go through it with him, which had a wonderful impact, because for the first time, they were forcing him to relate to us, and us to try again to relate to him. And we'd have to spend time with him, doing nothing but being together. And that was good, because that was when we really began to develop a good relationship. He got some decent education, some counseling, and he met Jesus, because they pounded scripture into him. But this wonderful house dad, who is still a close friend of ours and his, led him to Christ, and it was real. It was a genuine decision, and he really started to grow and decided that that's what he wanted. The night that he received Christ, though, I had a little experience with God, and I was very thrilled that he'd come to Christ. But God just told me, he says, I'm going to give you my love for Josh because you're going to need it. I went, is this a good thing or not? I'm going to need it. Well, he did. He really gave me his love for this boy. Before, you know, it was just we're doing the right things, but the love wasn't there because there was no relationship. And it was an amazing thing that was transforming to see how much God's love could flow through me to this needy kid. And so when he finished there, doing pretty well with the Lord and in life, wanting to make a good life, and we did homeschooling for a fall semester to catch him up, and then he begged. He's going into 9th grade then, so he's in high school, and he begged to go to public school. so we made, all sorts of requirements, rules, parameters, and we said, we'll try it for one semester and see how it goes. The first 3 weeks, he did great. And then he was back with all his gang friends, because he had joined the gang. And it just went downhill most of the time. So his walk with God over the next 15 years almost, let's see, was like walking with God, then down, a little bit of time where he ran into somebody or attended something. And so it was mostly living in the pits and occasionally coming out and showing some reality of actually knowing the Lord. And he introduced us to, I can tell you how to get out of traffic tickets. I can tell you so much about cars because he went through 17 cars in 5 years. We did not provide but one of them at the end when he graduated high school when he was 20, because I ended up homeschooling the rest of high school. And let's see, we learned about juvenile justice system and juvenile detention center. We learned about other court kinds of things. He spent a little time in jail and 2 years on probation. We have no idea how many girls he had. Drugs and alcohol, and we learned all of that. And nothing that we tried with him seemed to be able to pull him out of that. And we were desperate. And so I turned to God in more than I had, not that I hadn't been, but I just was, so I called some friends and I emailed some friends. I said, would you pray with us? And June 2nd is the day he received Christ. So I named it the Worldwide Day of Prayer for Josh. And I got people all over the world who could pray for Josh. And after that day, each time, he knew it was happening. He knows that's his day. And he would show some signs of making some better choices for a while, and then not. And but we did that for several years, and then God said, there are a lot of other people who are struggling too, with various degrees of concern for their children. But it's not that then it was primarily their children we're talking about. And so instead of the Worldwide Day of Prayer for Josh, it became the Worldwide Prodigal Prayer Day. And right now we have a virtual online community of about 900 people who love a prodigal and would like prayer. And so people post their requests and others pray for them. It's a wonderful group. And so I had all this prayer going on, but oh my goodness, what it did for me was incredible, because I just was desperate to help him and to feel like we were providing what he needed. And I just kept turning to the Lord with others, and it was like, this is the only way that we're gonna see the change that we need to see in this kid. And I knew the Lord. I'm about to celebrate my 60th spiritual birthday on New Year's Eve this year, since I came to Christ. And so I'm just like, I knew God. And I've been on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ for years. And it's like, how come? What is it that you need? God said, well, for you to come to the place of total dependence on God, and of recognizing that he's the one who will meet your needs and your children's needs and the other people that you care about and their needs, you have to come to a place where you're on your knees before the Lord, you're on your face before the Lord, of this total dependence, this surrender. We think we can be in control. We think we can make things happen the way we want them to, and I couldn't make it happen. And I'm a pretty strong-willed, stubborn person. And so it took a fair amount to get through to me. Only God can do it. But he will, if we let him work through us and flow through us in his love and power. And so that's, well, in the end, I'll tell you where Josh is now. But what I wanted to do was, with your little outline there, I just wanted to throw out a few thoughts of, one, some things that will be helpful to you in whatever place in your life, whether it's a child like mine or adult children, mostly I assume, who are just not where you would love them to be. There's sadness at that, or it's anything. There are hard things in our lives. There are health issues, there are financial issues, there are success issues, there are acceptance, who's accepting. I can't tell you how many health concerns I know about, but there are hard times in our lives. Every one of us experiences when we are in control and we can't make things the way we want them to be. And so, but with a person that you love who is making, I call them at the extreme, destructive decisions for their lives, where they will, well, I'll tell you the story and you'll get the picture. So my older daughter, Debbie, is a pretty structured person and wants things just right, and a little bit of a prophetic sense of this is the right thing to do and anything else is not acceptable. And she would get so mad at me because I wasn't getting after our son Josh for every little thing he did. And she said, "Why do you let him get away with that?" I said, "Debbie, I could be after him every day, 24 hours a day for the things that he's doing or not doing that he should be doing. And I don't have time to do that. So I'm gonna focus on the things that will save his life, because his life was in danger. And we were pretty sure that if he didn't have a family like us, at least, who would stick with him, he would end up in jail or dead. Those were his future options with the way he was living and choosing. And so she kind of went, well, yeah, I guess that matters, but it took her a while to get there, to believe that not taking care of every little thing mattered. The first thing that I think, and that if you read this book, and let's see, who's gonna give the testimony? Where are you? There! Say it, stand up. Say what you think.
It's amazing. You will read this book. We have 2 prodigals, and you will read this book and go, oh my gosh, yes. Like, my husband and I read it on the way home from Tennessee through chapter 6, and my husband said to me this morning, make sure you tell Judy that there was a lot of head nodding going on, and he would read it and go, how did she know that? Like, oh my gosh, yes. So I would encourage you to read the book. It's great.
Thank you. Relationship, maintaining relationship is one of the first and most important things. Now, if your loved one is wanting to break relationship, then they can do that. You can't stop them, but you can reach out to them and really seek to keep those connections. And when they're adults, those are connections that aren't telling them how to live their lives. Those connections are not trying to still be the parent who's controlling them, because you don't get to do that when they're adults. It was shocking to me. But maintaining relationship. So 3 different times in our son's life, he came and lived with us several times, and I'll tell you one more thing there in a minute, but he would come and he would want to, he said, can I come home for a while I kind of get some things together and get another job. Jobs were brief usually. And so he would, but we would set up these very clear boundaries. So we're glad to have you, we love you, we want to help you find a way forward in your life. But we also need you to respect us and our home, and so there will be, you need to do these things to be a contributing part of the family, and you don't do these things, and we're clear. And there are some defined expectations, but we do it in a relational way and not in a threatening way. And a lot of times people are told, well, you have to have tough love. So then that makes you be antagonistic or push away, or they feel rejected, and you are not opening the door to maintaining relationship. You're setting up barriers to that. And it's more than anything, it's in how you approach presenting boundaries and consequences, because they're necessary. You know, we have to have them all the time in our lives. You've got to know this is acceptable, this isn't, and employers do that. And so 3 different times when he had come home, he would live there for a while and it would be great, relationships working, and then he would start basically disrespecting what we value for our home and our relationships. And my husband would watch it for a while and then say, all right, you are choosing to move out. And he says, no, are you gonna kick me out? And we're like, no, we're not gonna kick you out. You are choosing to leave. Because if you wanna stay, we need you to do this and not do this. And so he knew that was true, but he'd try to, fight back at us. But the point is, not once in that time did we lose relationship with this kid. To me, it's amazing because he didn't have a good start with a relationship with us, and yet we had fought for it, and it had happened. So, relationship, but as they're adults especially, but even with younger, some clear understandings and boundaries and the consequences. But then, these are my 3 favorite words. If anybody asks about my book, I will tell them. It is about love, mercy, and grace. And it's about love. God really worked in me to teach me about his unconditional love. He just said, love, his love, has no conditions. There's nothing that somebody can do or not do to cause you to quit loving. Because he told us, and it's down here somewhere, maybe it's not, maybe it's just the notes I have. But Jesus said, you're to love as I have loved you, and that is to lay down your life for them. And so even though a kid or an adult is giving you a hard time, breaking your heart, disrespecting you, being irresponsible, that doesn't change the fact that God loves them and would like his love to flow through us to them. We will keep loving no matter what they do. Now that doesn't mean you just let them run over you and do whatever, but it just means they can at least hear and hopefully sense the love that you have for them, because that's what God does for us. And think about your own relationship with God and how he has pursued you. Even when you were running away or ignorant or angry at him. I get angry at God sometimes. And he says, I love you. In fact, the whole story of the Bible is the story of God's relentless pursuit of you and me and our families with his relentless love that he wants to pour on us. Second word is mercy. So think about something that you did that was really stupid or horrible, or to a person, or someone you love, or at school, or in relationships. Because I know I sin. I make bad choices. I'm a fairly feisty person. And that can cause me to be hurtful to people. And I really like my own way. And so that, how does God treat me? Does he say, get out of here? No. He says, just just like Jesus did from the cross. He says, Father, forgive them, those people who were torturing and killing him. Forgive them. And he says he wants us to forgive. It's one of his common topics in the New Testament. But it was true. I just read something in Jeremiah that just blew me away. And Jeremiah is talking about the children of Israel. And God is speaking through him, and he says, over and over and over, they choose to walk away, to go their own way, to do what they want, and not what I've asked them to do. He says, and over and over and over, I give them mercy, and I welcome them back. And that's what God wants us to do for the hard people in our lives. And grace basically means goodness you don't deserve. I know there are lots of cute ways to say it, but it's goodness you don't deserve. And he wants us to give grace to those in our lives who drive us crazy or hurt us or scare us to death. I lived in great fear about my son, especially every Friday night. Every Friday, he and his friends, that was their night. And they felt, well, we're gonna have fun tonight. And I didn't know what would happen. I also lived in fear of the phone call at 2 in the morning. The one from the hospital or the one from the jail. Got them, definitely received those phone calls. And give grace, because grace opens minds, open hearts, causes a willingness to come back and be reunited, which is what God is trying to do for each of us. He sent his son. He says, by grace you are saved. He says, I give grace. In fact, the verse, actually this other thing is wrong. It's my fault. It's Hebrews 4:16, and it says, come up to the throne of grace and let's see what I can do for you. And I like to think of it, well, if you hear about a throne of gold or a throne made of jewels, God's throne, if he were sitting on a throne, is made of grace because he wants to give good to us. In Jeremiah, it also says that he's always looking for ways to do good to us. Okay, quickly, resources. I'm just going to mention some, not talk about them because I'm going to give you the last one section. In this book, you'll find a lot of resources. And there are resources listed in the back, but each chapter is a resource. I'm going to read you the titles of the chapters. They're very short. And besides, you should read the foreword. It's awesome. It's written by Dan Wogelmuth, who is the president of Youth for Christ. And he's a great writer as well as a lover of prodigals. Can't read without glasses. Here are the chapters. Well, the first is the introduction. It's wilderness. Because if you love a prodigal who's really doing things that are scary, you're living in the wilderness, for sure. Love, grace, time. You know what the most common question somebody who's loving a prodigal is? How long, Lord? How long is this going to go on? We think we'll get through this quickly. Probably not. It doesn't usually happen quickly. Rest, because you're going to be exhausted. This is some ways for rest. Trust. How do you trust God when you don't see him doing what you think he should be doing? Prayer. It's got a whole lot of different ways to pray. Promise. Yeah, the promises that are in his name, not the promise, God promised to do this so I can hold on to that. Well, this is more using his names that he will be true to them. So it doesn't mean he'll do what you want, but it means when you read that he is Jehovah Jireh, the God who provides, that he will provide what you need. May not be what you think you need, but so every name of God is a promise that that's how he will be. And that's a wonderful thing. Hope, the Holy Spirit who makes it all possible, and gift, which I will get to in just a minute. So, then prayer, your own time before the Lord. You know, he says he loves it when people cry out to him. I find he's also quite open when I get mad at him. And people have said, you can't do that. You can't talk to God that way. I said, I really think he can handle it. Because he says, worship me in truth. So I have to be honest before him and tell him the truth about how I feel and how desperate I am and how afraid I am. So pray, but get with other people. That's why we have this prayer community. I have a friend who during, I'd say, the 3 worst years of our journey with our son, if I needed her, she was there. She lived down the street from me, and she would come over, we would pray. She was just an angel to me. And so if there's somebody that you can trust who will be a faithful prayer warrior with you, that's a huge, wonderful thing. The Word of God, of course. There's so much there. You can go and be in the Word, and every single time God can speak to you. Something to encourage your heart, to give you hope, to give you wisdom. I can tell you stories. I suppose I'm almost out of time. All right, rewards. And you think, that's a strange thing. Well, it was our word to go with others. But it is in a sense, because the last chapter in my book is called Gift. Because you see, God told me in the beginning this boy was a gift. And in those ensuing years, it felt like anything but a gift. In fact, I wrote an article called Gratitude for a Grievous Gift. Because it was a grievous gift. It was a hard gift. I didn't like it. I would just assume God had not given me this gift then. But now, when I see what God has done in my life because of walking with him through this hard time, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I am a totally different person because of the gift of this boy who's the hardest thing I've ever experienced in my life. Are there harder things? Yes. Sometimes you lose a child. That's one of the hardest things I can ever imagine. Though we came close to losing him, especially when his first wife just totally ended everything. And he had gone over to try and make up with her. He worked as an armed guard then. And so he called, and he didn't call me. He texted me and he said, well, pray I go to heaven. I went, wait. So I texted him back, and at first he wouldn't respond. And then eventually he did. And he said, I'm sitting here in my truck out in the woods. I said, where? And he says, I'm not telling you. He said, and I have my gun in my hand, and I'm done. And I said, please don't be done. And so we're texting for an hour. I texted back and forth with him. And it took that long to convince him that he was loved, that he had a future, that God had things he would do in him and through him. And so finally he put his gun down. And he went home. But the gift was that God had given us a relationship that he would let me talk him out of it, that he was willing to do that. One of the gifts is my prayer life. You know, it tells us in 1 Thessalonians to pray without ceasing. Do you know what that, can you do that? Pray without ceasing? Well, I've come pretty close because of my son, because it was ever on my heart, mostly on my mind, constantly talking to God about him and what he would do in his life and through him. And that God was more committed to rescuing and redeeming unconditional love. Yeah, I learned that from him, but here I'll wrap up with this. So here's a great gift that I got from our son. Gratitude. You see, he tells us we're to give thanks, what? In everything, all things, always giving thanks. And you know, you're like, seriously, who can do that? I learned to do it. I mean, do I do it every single time? Not right away sometimes, but mostly I do it. He changed the way I live my life from one of being actually a fair complainer, because I always want things my way, and I want my own way, and so it's easy for me to especially complain about the humidity in Florida. I'm not fond of humidity, but those are little things, you know, big things. So when my son was working as a landscaper, he was trimming a huge hedge, and there was a fence behind it, and he was using a chainsaw. And so he's doing the chainsaw, and it clipped the back of the fence there behind the hedge, jerked back, hit him in the head from here to here, cut it. And I get this phone call from his then wife, that was his first wife, and she said, Josh is on his way to the trauma emergency room. He cut his head open with a chainsaw. And so I was like, okay, Lord, thank you. And but I'll tell you the sweet thing that happened. I get there, and I went in, and he's in a lot of pain, and they had been cleaning it, which was really painful. And they, he said, yeah, it hurt a whole lot. And he said, the first thing I did was call 911, and the second thing I did was say, thank you, Lord. And he goes, seriously? He said, thank you for cutting his head open, but so did I. And it was just like, this is contagious. Oh, it is contagious. And if we can learn to practice giving thanks in all things, it will change us. We will live a much happier life, I assure you. But it will be contagious to the people around us also. We'll get to live a happier life because we learned to say thank you, Lord. That chapter has 8 gifts. There are more, but it has 8. So when you get to chapter 10, you'll find out all that God is offering you through the struggle, the pain, the concerns, the fears, the whatever it is, whether it is a prodigal driving you crazy, or one who's just disappointing you, or if it's something else in life. God says, these things that are so hard will drive you into God's arms, will drive you into trusting Him, into prayer, and in learning to say, thank you, Lord, in everything. And those are the gifts of life. And my son has gifted me with so much more life and relationship with God as well as with Him. He's now 36. He is married again, has a stepdaughter and a little girl, and he's got a steady job. He's had that job for 4 years now. That's a record. They live on a little farm, and he loves the animals that they're raising on their little farm. And he's a good person. In fact, he went from trying to be always tough, because he was big, you know, to being one of the sweetest, gentlest people that I know. And is he doing great? Well, he could do better. Life is hard for them financially. She's sick. She has Lyme disease. And that's really a horrible thing. But God is working still. And so He knows that I consider this our book, his and mine. He has signed off on it and said, yes, I can say all these things. And he's excited that God is using it. And when I told him that we were having the release party 2 weeks ago and it was out, he said, I hope it helps lots of families. So, thank you.
Can you stay there?